Good morning. I will begin by reminding you that Washington Irving grew up around the Hudson River Valley. So, in order to understand the meaning of Rip Van Winkle and the legend of Sleepy Hollow, you should know the background of these two stories. So, I will begin by introducing Henry Hudson to you, who was an English sea explorer who sailed up the Hudson River, which was, of course, named after him, in the early 17th century. And he was the one who laid the foundation for the Dutch colonization of this whole region. So New Amsterdam was a Dutch settlement, and it was located at the southern tip of Manhattan Island. Later on, New Amsterdam will be renamed and become New York in honor of the Duke of York, who was to become James II of England. And it was in James II's name that the English basically captured this area. So the story of Henry Hudson and his lost crew inspired Rip Van Winkle, and this is a famous part of American mythology and folklore. What happened? So Hudson allegedly sailed with his crew up the Hudson River, and he lost his crew one night in 1609. The ship's name was the Half Moon, so it's quite symbolic in a way. And the crew basically followed some strange sounds that they could hear. It was some kind of music, and they encountered a group of gnomes. A gnome would be like a small, dwarfish, mythical being, very mischievous. And the crew drank the gnome's liquor. It's basically the same as in Rip Van Winkle, and after that they turned into gnomes themselves. But according to this legend, the effect of the liquor wore off when the liquor did. So this is the legend upon which Rip Van Winkle is based, and I will tell you just a couple of basic things about the story, and you will read the story in your tutorials. So who is Rip Van Winkle? Okay, let me just move on to my next slide. Rip Van Winkle is an indolent, lazy, but very good-natured, middle-aged man who lives with his family in a village located at the foot of the Catskill Mountains. This region is allegedly full of ghosts and of fable, and this is why strange things can happen to you if you live there. So as I said, he's very lazy, and the only thing that actually frightens Rip is the tongue of his wife. And I want to show you the ways in which Irving majestically describes the tongue of Dame Van Winkle. So these are some examples. What courage can withstand the ever-during and all-besetting terrors of a woman's tongue? So I did mention in my previous video that Irving has quite a specific style, which is not always easy to read and to understand. I think you can already grasp the meaning of my words. I mean, you can see here that he employs everyday language, but in an unexpected way to describe a woman's tongue. So, for example, I like it when he says, "A sharp tongue is the only edged tool that grows keener with constant use." Keener here means sharper. So unlike a knife that will go dull if you use it all the time, if you have a sharp tongue and you use it all the time, it will become even sharper. And finally, my third example, morning, noon, and night. Her tongue was incessantly going, and everything he said or did was sure to produce a torrent of household eloquence. So pay attention especially to this last phrase, a torrent of household eloquence. Eloquence is here, of course, ironic. If you're eloquent, it should mean something positive, but here Dame Van Winkle is a nagging wife. And of course, the word torrent is very strong when used in to express what Irving wanted here. When you read the story, pay attention to who Rip is, what his wife is like, and of course about the setting, because Irving uses his setting to characterize the personages in his story. I also mentioned that in my previous video. So if the setting is ghoulish and dark and misty, then his characters will be similar to that. Okay. Irving, basically, in much the same way as he described Dame Van Winkle's tongue, he describes other characters and places and situations in a humorous way, very colorful and very dynamic. So we begin to sympathize with Rip early on. So because Rip is so scared of his wife, who is of course a symbolic character, I will come to that later on, he likes spending time with his friends in an inn. And they just gather there and talk about different boring things. Now, the inn itself is also symbolic because there is a portrait above the inn with the image of King George III, who was a famous British king, or maybe infamous. We'll see about that. And because of his portrait, we know immediately that the story is set prior to the American Revolution. So the country at the beginning of the story is still part of the British Empire. So one day, the action goes like this. One day, Rip goes on an adventure to hunt for squirrels with his dog, Wolf. And as in the legend that I described about Henry Hudson, he encounters a very strange figure who is dressed like a Dutch. And this figure carries a keg full of liquor, and he beckons Rip to come and follow him, which Rip does, of course. And as they approach the valley, they can hear some strange noises in the background as of somebody playing at 9 pins. To bi bila neka vrsta kuglanja. So when they get there, they see other similarly dressed characters who play this game in silence, and they're all drunk, of course, and Rip makes the mistake of trying their liquor. So following the legend, Rip did not turn into a gnome himself, but he falls to sleep. And when he awakens, he finds that his whole world has changed. He cannot recognize anything around him, and he soon discovers he has been sleeping for 20 years. During this time, the society as he knew it before his sleep has completely changed, and for example, instead of the image of George III, now they have a sign that America is now an independent country, and that he is seeing General Washington's face instead of George III. So now Rip, after 20 years, is a free citizen of the United States. So when other villagers see him, they recognize him. Basically, but I mean, there's no difference between Rip as he was and Rip as he is when he awakens, apart from him getting older, but his mind is still the same. One of the oldest characters in the book is Peter Vanderdonk, who explains he knows what happened, and he believes Rip that he had slept for 20 years. So he explains that the crew that he encountered was actually Henry Hudson's crew. They are ghosts who supposedly appear every 20 years to get a new victim. So this is shortly, I mean, something that can be said about Rip Van Winkle without actually reading the story itself. The fact that his adventure, his sleep, begins during winter is also very symbolic, because winter symbolizes death, and his sleep is actually a small death. And the game that the Dutch crew are playing is also symbolic because games carry sacred knowledge within themselves. And I will explain this once I come to the legend of Sleepy Hollow, because I'm trying to compare the two stories and connect them in a specific way. So, as for the union between man and the supernatural, this was Irving's way of writing. If you remember, he incorporated the fantastic elements and the mythical elements and the fables into a traditional narrative, which is why he's so praised even nowadays. The forest can represent Rip's imagination, but it also reminds us of a Shakespearean element which he used in his comedies, and this element is called the green world. Namely, in a Shakespearean comedy, characters who live in an ill society, let's say in a town or a city, which is corrupt, they go to the forest usually to cure themselves. Now, this forest is called the green world. And this name was given by the famous Canadian theorist Northrop Frye. The community, on the other hand, in Rip Van Winkle represents reason and stability, and you will see that this is completely the opposite in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is why I want to contrast the two stories as well. At the end of the story, Rip is a solitary man. He discovers that his wife had died. Fortunately for him, he sees his daughter. He has a grandson. He sees his son, Rip Jr., who is the exact replica of Rip himself. But he ends up talking to children most of the time, and children will be his most valuable audience because they're the only ones who actually believe him and understand him. And finally, for this part of the video about Rip Van Winkle, I want to show you just one example of Irving's language. I singled out this one. Let me just zoom it in so that we can read that together. As you will see, there is some vocabulary that is pretty hard to grasp. It goes like this. Their tempers, doubtless, are rendered pliant and malleable in the fiery furnace of domestic tribulation, and a curtain lecture is worth all the sermons in the world for teaching the virtues of patience and long suffering. Well, based on my experience, when I read this quote in class, students are let's say confused. They do not understand anything that is said in this sentence. So let me try and just deconstruct it a bit. You can see some vocabulary down there. So pliant means flexible, easy to adapt. Malleable, something similar. Tribulation, a huge misfortune in life. And a curtain lecture is when somebody is criticizing you behind the curtains. Mi to kažemo i iza zavese. Ok, hajde da vidimo onda zajedno šta bi ovo značilo i na što se ovo odnosi. Šta bih vas ja pitala na ispitu? Recimo, na što se odnosi there? Ko su ti they, na koga se ovo odnosi? Odnosi se na muževe, naravno. Temper bi ovdje bila čud. Onda bih vas pitala what part of speech is doubtless, because it's very specific. It does not end in ly, but it is an adverb. I ne postoji reč doubtlessly. Tako da bi to trebalo da znate. So this is about husbands who are made adaptable and flexible and basically calm because their wives have sharp tongues. So a curtain lecture given by a wife to her husband is much more valuable than any sermon in the world. So your wife, if she's strong enough and sharp enough, she can, it says here, of course, I do not necessarily agree, she can shape you and mold you into something much better than the priest, for example. So I hope you can see on this very short example how challenging it is to read Irving and to understand all his ironies and all his jokes. And in my final video about Irving, we'll speak about the legend of Sleepy Hollow, and finally I will compare and contrast the two stories.